Thank you very much for inviting me to this event. As weird as it may sound, I'm glad to talk about a humanitarian crisis in Yemen, hoping that my words would actually, take the way to change how things are dealt with at this point. The current figures from OCHA said that 17 million Yemenis are, in need for assistance. That is 68% of the population. They are food insecure, and more than 3 million are internally displaced. These figures are certainly underestimated, knowing that Yemenis do not report being displaced, or they actually move to their families in other places. Yemen humanitarian crisis is not new. It's actually 27 months old. I myself lived some of the worst days of this crisis. When the war started, life in Yemen was put on hold. There was no fuel, no electricity, and hence no water, in a country that depends completely on underground water. The government was shut down, most private businesses closed, schools, hospitals, and social services stopped. To escape the war, people paid fortunes to get to safe places, just to realize soon that there are no safe places in Yemen. For months, people lived their fears and hopelessness. Yemenis have overcome their fears and learned to adapt and live the misery that is continuing to this day. What remains of government offices reopened. Private businesses also reopened, and many new ones were created to fill in the new needs. People learned to sleep the long, dark nights, while those who could afford it got connected to new private electricity suppliers or bought solar panels. Learning to live without public electricity supply is a big challenge. But let me remind you, learning to live without water is not possible. Despite all the adjustments, the situation has gotten worse. The war has destroyed much of the economic and social infrastructure in Yemen. Hundreds of schools, hospitals, roads, government offices, and factories became the victims of war. Prices of food and water skyrocketed, and education and health services became unaffordable for the majority of the population. The humanitarian situation has dramatically deteriorated since September 2016, when the government of Sana'a allies, between parentheses, stopped paying salaries of some 1.2 million employees. It has been 9 consecutive months without payments of about 25% of the total employment of workforce in Yemen. This group of people directly provide for some 36% of the total population, and may be responsible for over 50% of the total economic activity in the country. People in Yemen are in need of water, basic food supplies, and energy. Without improving the supply of energy, the situation in Yemen cannot be improved. The widespread famine, malnutrition, and breakout of cholera are few of the indicators of the humanitarian crisis. There are obvious health implications of the crisis. My colleague has already talked about. I would like here to focus on the long-term effects of the humanitarian crisis. When people lose their source of income and are worried about securing the next food, the next meal, when they are unsure about the future and about the future of their children, they will find alternative sources to live. Some find opportunities, create new opportunities. For the majority, especially among the youth, joining the fight becomes the most appealing alternative. It is the lack of opportunity that forces people to join the war. Soon, these people become dependent on war. This is the conflict, and this conflict education is one of the most important victims. The government is no longer providing the necessary support. There are no books, and the funds to operate schools are not there, and teachers are not paid. When survival is at stake, education becomes the second priority. It has been 27 months, and the conflict is expected to continue. In Yemen, we risk to have a generation without education, a generation without a future. What can we do? We can do a lot. I can summarize in few points. I think the first and obvious thing is to allow delivery of and movement of essential needs, including food, medicine, and fuel, energy, and stop targeting civilian infrastructure. I refer to the statement of OCHA humanitarian coordinator in Yemen in June 2017. We can fill in the gap, the funding gap. Only 40% of the 2.1 billion estimated needed funds for the humanitarian response has been filled. Yemenis with critical cases, especially medical cases, used to go to other countries, especially Egypt and Jordan, to get treatment. This is not possible anymore. The airport, especially Sana'a airport, is closed. So resuming flights from Sana'a airport is essential. A must, after all, is to combine this short, relief efforts with more of a development perspective of the humanitarian response. While life necessities are required, providing food and water is essential, we need to think about long-term solutions so we could save the future of Yemen and Yemenis. If we stop development, then we risk losing the future. Despite the hardship, Yemenis are trying hard and still hopeful the new future and prosperous future will come. Let me end with a story. More Volunteers Foundation is a non-government organization based in Yemen. In a recent evaluation of a project with the youth, I asked a young man who was part of an informal youth initiative about the needs of the youth. He said, and I quote, "We discovered that we could do so much with little money. The grant our initiative received was just $500. We are proud of what we achieved. Youth join the military, the militias because they have no alternatives. In my opinion," and this is in his words, "what we need are opportunities." Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. But I'd like to remind you all, painfully, that we're in Washington, D.C., and we're in a city that is right now in gridlock over the issue of taking money from the poorest of the poor in our own country so that we can cut taxes on the richest of the rich. I mean, that is the mentality of the largest bilateral donor in the world. That's a fact. And we've never really, the United States has never really been in that mental state before. So we can talk about more money coming in to solve the problem. We can talk about more generosity from the international community, but the United States has always led that international community, and we're not in that mentality, that political mood anymore. Now, I say this with some, well, you know how I feel. I'm not gonna go there. We're bipartisan at the Middle East Institute, but that is a fact about the United States. So it's almost Darwinism, survival of the fittest. So what do you say about Yemen? I mean, where does Yemen fit in that ladder if we're going to be don't even want to give money to the poorest of the poor Americans in our health care bill? What kind of effective argument can you marshal to save babies in Yemen? Hard question. question. I know. I'm sorry, there is no answer, but I want,
you know,
but that's what we're facing. That's what people around this table are facing. Mr. Aliriani, you're next up. You talk about the need for water. That's certainly true, and the lack of water, and that has certainly predated this conflict. But it's certainly been aggravated by the conflict in many ways. And yet I was surprised, because I asked this question a little while ago. Maybe I got the wrong answer, but I did ask a question. Does the conflict and the aggravation of lack of water and the food insecurity and the fact that we've heard the statistics about malnutrition and impending famine, are Yemenis still growing cot? Just ask it.
Good question. Yeah, good question. I mean, well, Yemenis are still growing gat, and I believe it's part of the economy. In that sense, it's not bad to have a cat at this point because it helps the economy moving despite all these pitfalls. I mean, I'm not a cat shower. I don't support it, but it is part of the economy. It is it's a waste of water. I agree, but it's the only way that rather the poor farmers could live at this point of time. I mean, they have no alternative, especially after the government cut their paying salaries. People in the countryside and in the rural areas are living on cut, most probably. I mean, that's the situation. If I may comment on two things. First, I did realize, in the past couple of years since I came to the U.S., I've been trying to find a way on which to convince, the U.S. that it's the best of their interest to stop the war in Yemen. And obviously there is no argument here. I talked to many experts about the counterterrorism and so on, but it's a dilemma because there is Iran and there is the Al-Qaeda, so it's like it's two faces. I mean, and you have to deal with it. So I think I leave that to Americans to find a solution, because this is not typical to Yemen. It's in other countries as well. I think the way we could do is to find. I mean, this conflict is not going to end tomorrow, and we cannot afford to wait. We need to think about regarding protection, international humanitarian law. There are ways to pressure the coalition and legitimate government because they are legitimate. They have an international presence. But if you talk about the Houthi militias, how could you put pressure on them? I mean, they don't care. I mean, they don't care about people suffering. They don't care about whether people are dying of hunger or cholera, whatever. So the only way is to find a local mechanisms to pressure. I mean, and also in that matter for delivery of aid, because as some of my on the previous session we talked about the unique political structure in Yemen. Despite the weak government, there is almost no government. There's still things are functioning. Look at communication. Mobile phones are functioning, north and south, east and west, rural and urban. Why is this happening and not other things are not? So we should think in the same way. This is the economy functioning. Can we find a formula to make aid function the same way, to make maybe politicians function the same way, to find find their interest in the solution, not just to push. Pushing is not going to lead us anywhere if we are dealing with an organization or with a group that is coming from the medieval ages, having some ideology and some goals that are beyond this world, beyond this modern age. How can we deal with it? We have to find a formula like the telecommunication system that everybody gets an interest, everybody gets his stake, I would say, maybe.
Good point. Question here, and then we'll come to you.
The feeling is that there is a consensus. There is a feeling that all these people feel that the humanitarian aspect is dire, and it should be separated from the resolution of the political and armed conflict. Okay, we can. This is an area that the U.S. can do, and it has enough clout to implement. But in all, you are asking also about practical steps, yes? So this will be practical steps that I'm going to mention. And there should be a carrot for each side and a stick for each side, because we are separating it from the conflict resolution. Lifting the ban, number one, lifting the bans on all airports. It should be in all airports. And by that, I mean Sana'a and Taiz Airport. And that will also solve the problem of lifting the siege on Taiz as well, which everyone is tired of. Siege of cities should be stopped. Release of the forcibly disappeared. There are thousands. This will be in exchange of lifting ban on aid and humanitarian aid. Use of landmines. It should be stopped. Caring for the displaced people, it should be stopped. But there is only another thing. For all past steps in negotiations, truces, aid, and always in some way or another benefited the coup, right? This time, it should be for both sides, for both sides. So yes, lift the ban on Sana'a Airport, lift on Port of Hodeidah and Taiz Airport. No shelling besieged cities. No landmines. Forcibly disappeared thousands. I have stayed with people who are forcibly disappeared, and they live a horrid life. Horrid life. So yes, humanitarian aspect should be separated, because I don't think it will be the conflict would be solved by peaceful means. I can talk about this for ages. That there is no political solution or peaceful solution for the problem of Yemen. But if we are clever and separate the humanitarian thing from this, I think this will satisfy most of us and will satisfy the population there.
I will speak in Arabic. Welcome. In fact, it is regrettable what is happening in terms of the human situation in Yemen. It is a disaster, but I believe that the greatest problem is to transform the crisis in Yemen because of a military coup that will destroy the state against the will of the people to a humanitarian crisis. And the international community is helping in this, and the granting states, including the United States. This is a great disaster. The donor states and the United Nations are dealing with the parties, those who did the legitimate government and the people who did the coup. In paying money and to treat cholera and all that, which made the Houthis and those who made the coup use these aid in military efforts against the Yemenis. This is a disaster. Since the United Nations and the international community recognize the state and the legal government, that the areas that are under the control of the state should receive the support, but the other areas under the militias should not get this. The Red Cross is doing a great deal of efforts there, but those who implement the projects against cholera or disease or famine must be done. But to give assistance directly or indirectly to organizations that are under those who made the coup, that complicates the human disaster in Yemen. We have areas in Taz that are suffering from a humanitarian disaster. The presence of the international organizations is not there really on the ground. But the areas that has those who made the coup, the Red Cross can work easily there without any hampers. But these, so they pay money to the Houthis and those who did they did the coup, and they use it in their military actions. So part of the aid is one that is called delaying the resolution of the crisis. So the Red Cross and the major partners who recognize the legal government, such as Saudi Arabia, provided, for example, a large sum of money and gave it to the institutions of the state and to the United Nations. This is something that we can see. But when you pay money to those who made the coup in another area, that increases the continuation of the war. Because if we focus on the Houthis, we find that they used the money from international communities and governments to continue the war. So everybody must have a different point of view in order to help in stopping the war. The humanitarian situation is getting worse day by day, and the international community are supporting some of these people who made the coup.
The question is, have the coordinating people at the United Nations that coordinate these 85,000 been asked, are you ready, willing, and accepting of a mission and a mandate to go to Yemen on the border? That's one place where you could have them protect peace or enhance the prospects of peace. Yes or no on that? But
okay, I just would like to comment about talk about peacekeepers. I mean, obviously, peacekeepers, we need to find a negotiation ground before talking about peacekeepers, and this is not available. And when we talk about finding an argument to, for the U.S. to have an interest in stopping the war, we will also think about what is an argument to pressuring the Houthis. How could we pressure the Houthis to come to the table to negotiate? This is not an easy task, and has been tried and has failed. And I would argue that the past 27 months of war has demonstrated that war is not the solution. Military solution is not there. I do disagree that a peaceful solution cannot be reached. Otherwise, if we cannot achieve it by war, we cannot achieve it by solution. What is it? So I would say a political solution is possible. What we need to do is to think about what is the thing that makes the Houthis less responsive, popular among the people. And I would argue that the more we push people by depriving them of their daily lives, making their life miserable, has failed, and it will continue to fail. If the people are pressured, they will go behind the Houthis. They will support them because they have no alternative. We have to provide them with alternative, and the alternative is to support them. If the people are having better life, if the people are able to go about their life, they will resist the Houthis. It's the contrary. It's not the pressure on the people that we are putting by closing Sana'a airport. How many people would suffer from this? Thousands, if not 10,000 people are suffering. This is not pressuring Houthis. This is pressuring the regular people, and that's why people are gathering behind the Houthis. This morning, one of the colleagues said that Houthis can easily get people behind them. Would you ask why? Because people don't have an alternative. They need to have an alternative. And I would say by opening up to people, by supporting them, providing more aid, and providing them more development, this is how we are going to win the war against the Houthis. It's not by military, it's not by closing up, it's not by punishing the whole population.
But while al-Houthi controls the center of Yemen, how we can like even deliver the food for them. Always we deliver the like some aids for them, but he used it for his like goals, and he used to recruit more people in his like fronts. And some of them, of you guys, they mentioned how we want to operate Sana'a airport. How we can operate Sana'a airport while the battle around Sana'a, which airplane company will go there? And also we have other airports there, we can use them. Before the war, it was only Sana'a airport was international. And all Yemenis, we go from Hadramaut to Sana'a and to travel. Yeah, we have some other internationals like Aden, but it was like 2 or 3 flights there. So it's not that matter only that Sana'a airport will change the formula for the war. So we can deliver food there, but we can't while Houthis there. So for the government, as the ambassador said, they are ready for to go to peace talk or wherever like the international community want. But the troublemaker, he's a Houthi. This power in Sana'a need to remove from there under any circumstance. We don't want to share a terrorist organization, same as ISIS. Nobody like can make different. Only the different, they are Shia and others, they are Sunni.
Thank you, Mohammed Hadrami from Yemen Embassy. Just to touch upon the central bank in Aden, the government's been trying so hard to resume the functioning of the central bank because, to be honest, we're worrying more about inflation and the ability to purchase food than the availability of food itself in Yemen. And the role of the central bank is very central to this. And to just give you an update, the SWIFT account is up and running from Aden. And also we're in the final stages of solving the issues with accounts with the filter in New York, if it hasn't been solved already, just to give you some updates. Thank you.
My name is Munir Al-Umari. I'm the director of the Social Research and Development Center based in Sana'a, Yemen. Now it is shut down because of the Houthi and Saleh problems in there. Now, in order to talk about Yemen and in order to do away with the humanitarian situation in Yemen, we need to have sustainable peace. We need to restore peace and security in Yemen. This is the key thing. The international community should be they should be serious enough, okay, to push Houthi and Saleh, okay, to accept political process. Otherwise, they should do some special targeting of Houthi and Saleh. They should target the leaders of Houthis and Saleh if they are not accepting, the political process and they are not going that direction. For more about the humanitarian situation in Yemen, they need actually, for now, there is a problem, about the economy. It is not functioning well, okay? So I think the UN agency should work with international communities. They need to pump more money into the system in order to pay for salaries for people, okay? This will help to a great deal. There is one problem also about the international organizations. The assistance that is provided by these organizations, actually it is poorly, let's say, channeled, okay? And it's not delivered to those who are actually in need. And there is also one problem, which is normally, most of the time they will, for example, Houthis and others, they might, not allow them to deliver some assistance. They will not say clearly, okay, Houthis do not allow us, for example, to have this entered into Taiz or some other city. So this is something that needs to be clear. You have to state very clearly that, okay, the reason behind this, you cannot say, for example, that, okay, I'm biased, I'm neutral, I'm this and that, without, stating who is behind what.
Okay, I just want to conclude what we have discussed. Actually, it should be open the airports and the ports, because as you see, humanitarian needs medical supplies, needs foods, all these cases, because the import medical and food is expensive because it comes from other ways. So it should be open. If we need to think about humanitarian assistance for the country, we should open all the borders. This first one. Second one, about the salaries. Salaries, it is the right of everyone to have it. No one can, prevent it from the people. So we need to focus on this issue because it's very important, rather than political things, Third one, that's comment about the more funds for Houthis. I'm not political expert, but Sana'a, for example, in the northern part include Houthis and non-Houthis. So, and how much the percent of the non-Houthis compared to Houthis? So in overall that we need support because it's humanitarian needs. People will die even Houthis or non-Houthis. So it needs to be focused in this way. Third thing that I want to focus that, as we see that all the political parties, they are not suffering from what's happening in Yemen. As we can see, not government, not the Houthis, no one suffered. To have an action or to have peace meeting, my opinion, I'm not sure about this, they should go to Yemen and have a meeting there, especially in the areas that it is very hot weather, without electricity, without food, fear of the cholera. I think if they meet in that same area that what all Yemenis is facing, I'm sure that they will come up with the solutions. Thank you.
Yeah, stop Geneva meetings. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I am a little bit disturbed by the discussion, I must say, because every time we go back to when we are talking about humanitarian aspects of the crisis, we should talk about humanitarian aspects. We should not give any excuses for not helping people. We cannot afford that, and I think this is a basic thing that we have to have in mind when we talk about humanitarian aspects. Again, the using of people's suffering as a war tool is not acceptable. Not because because of humanitarian aspects, because it's not going to help achieve the objectives of the war, including the objectives of the coalition. I do believe and still believe that it is to the best to the best benefit to the Houthis if people are suffering more. So we should stop that. We cannot afford to wait for the conflict to end or call for discussion or pressures, whatever, and not do anything. We cannot afford. People are dying. People are every day people are dying of sickness. People are losing their future. Children are not going to school. All kinds of suffering that people are going through that we are not probably aware of staying here. I would say there is an interesting thing. When I was here, I have been here for some time, and I was trying to provide any help for Yemen. I know I am associated with a local NGO there, and I could not find any organization in Yemen and the US that is interested in working in Yemen. There is no funds available in the US, and I think that's also the case in other countries. There are no drives, no fundraising for Yemen, even at the local level, like small NGOs and so on. So I would urge each of you to look into that, even as individuals, to contribute and try to find a way. And for me, I'm trying my best to provide help. We need to, as citizens, maybe establish some organization here to fundraise for people, money that goes directly and quickly from here to Yemen instead of going through the bureaucracy, and I do believe that with, for example, the Yemeni expats here, hundreds of thousands of them, there is good money that could be shifted, and this is what we can do at this point.